Hi guys, welcome back to Novel Nomad. My name is Kate and today I'll be doing my April and mid to early May book haul because I've just realised how many books I bought over the past few weeks. So first off are the two lovely poetry collections from Emily O'Neill. Now I first read Emily's works in her collection called Pelican, which is on a view on grief, and I absolutely loved it. Thank you for Jen Campbell for the poetry recommendation. But these two are two more of Emily's works. I managed to sneak this one off Amazon and this one I found on Book Depository. Another book I purchased was H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. Now I have been wanting to read this book for a while, but I saw this amazing cover. The cover design is actually by Timorous Beasties, which is, they focus on nature drawings, and they've done this entire collection for vintage called The Birds and the Bees. But this is absolutely stunning. It's in those beautiful editions like the Jane Austen and the Bronte classics. But I absolutely loved this cover and I really want to get the other ones because I'm really fascinated in non-fiction on nature, and this is a great personal non-fiction because from what I've heard it's a bit of a mixture between a memoir, stages of grief, as well as training and taming a goshawk. Now I'm sure everyone's been seeing this one doing the rounds on Booktube, but I also picked up a copy of The Vegetarian by Han Kang in this beautiful foiled cover, and I am really fascinated with this one. The idea that we never get to see it from the woman's perspective, but it from three perspectives. They're all biased. You can look at multiple different reviews on this one. Jean from Bookish Thoughts did a great review and I definitely want to check it out. Another one that I picked up that was on my most anticipated reads video is Strangely Beautiful by Leanna Renee Hyber. I've actually read the first one in the series. It's called The Strangely Beautiful Tale of Persephone Parker, and it is a Persephone retelling in a sense. It's more of twisting that theme. It's not focusing so much on the romance, although there is romance in here. It's more like delving into the themes of the whole Greek mythology and the underworld and creating a new fantasy out that in some fairly rockin' steampunk Victorian style. And this cover is stunning. It's actually got the second book in this as well. I never got to read the second one, but just have a look at that cover. It's so pretty. The next book I picked up was Everyone Brave is Forgiven by Chris Cleave. Now I have been highly recommended his other works as well, but this one I really want to read because of course it is a historical fiction and it is set in World War II, which is one of my favourite eras to research. So this sounds really fascinating. It follows Mary North, who immediately enlists for war work as soon as war is declared in 1939, and she expects that she can make a brilliant spy. She's very clever, and yeah, it doesn't happen that way. She ends up becoming a teacher for lots of the minority children within London at the time, and this takes her down a different path. And you also see two best friends who are into the war. One of the friends doesn't want to sign up, but his friend does, so he feels compelled to go along with him. So I think this is going to be a really fascinating read, if not just for the setting, but for the characters themselves. Another book I picked up was Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates. Now, I haven't read much into this one, but I have heard Laura Bates just recently released her memoir called Girl Up, and I have been wanting to read Everyday Sexism for a while. It's where a young journalist who experienced some sexism within her work also started up a series to tell untold stories of sexism happening within everyday, within workplaces, within families, within societies. Is really fascinating, and I have been wanting to read something like this for a very long time because I read a lot of history non-fiction, but I really enjoy current politics as well, and sexism and feminism is very high up on my list, so I really would love to read this one. Now I'll quickly run through the next pile. I actually got these at a dollar sale at a small independent secondhand bookstore, and so I just do them really quickly. So the first one is actually called West with the Night by Beryl Markham. This has been recently republished by Virago, and it actually follows this very famous woman who is one of the pioneer aviator in the 30s. Paula McLean actually recently wrote a book called Circling the Sun, and I think Beryl actually made an appearance in that. But I really wanted to, as soon as I saw the Virago had released or re-released it, I really wanted to get it. So it's been on my wish list for a while, and I was so thrilled when I saw they actually had one of the original copies out from Penguin. The next book I got is Roald Dahl's Over to You, which is a book of short stories about recovering after the Second World War and what some of he and his mates went through. I've got his biographies such as Boy and also Going Solo, but this is actually post-World War II, and he was a fighter pilot during the war. So it'll be really interesting because I think it might delve into a little bit of post-traumatic stress that they would have suffered at the time as well. So this is going to be really fascinating. The next one I got is called The White Nile by Alan Moorhead, and I haven't heard much on this one. It is quite an old history book, and it's about the opening of the Nile during the Victorian period and the starting of the trade with Egypt, and also of course Egyptology becoming incredibly popular, and also the access to Sudan, which became very fraught with danger during the Victorian time. And I had recommendations from a family member and they absolutely loved this book. So as soon as I saw it, it was $1, I really wanted to pick it up because it's an area of history that I've recently become fascinated with as I've been reading the Amelia Peabody books. So continuing on with the war and history theme, I picked up The War Diaries of Weary Dunlop. Now he isn't a famous Australian war hero as such, and he actually wrote diaries during the time when he was a prisoner of war in Java, and also when he was working on the Burma Thailand Railway. And these are from 1942 to 1945. Now I personally don't know much about Weary Dunlop because I've studied a lot of larger war movements during the Second World War, and I always thoroughly enjoy looking at the smaller biographies and especially any diaries, and this is like wonderfully photographed and it has some of his original illustrations that he illustrated at the time, so it's an absolutely brilliant account of what happened to prisoners of war in Java and also what was happening on the Burma Railway when it was being built. So this is going to be a fascinating read and probably very upsetting and very graphic. A bit of a change of pace, I picked up At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Now he wrote The Princess and the Goblin, which I have a beautiful old copy of as well, but this one, look, is also another one, and apparently his more popular story, although I did really thoroughly enjoy Princess and Goblin. This is about a little boy called Diamond who's whisked away by a lady, and she's actually the North Wind, and she carries him around on all these adventures when he's in his nightgown. And I really love getting into old kids stories when they've got some timelessness and beautiful fairy tale elements to it. And it does come illustrated, which I think is lovely as well. Last two, I picked up The Queen of Wit, A Life of Letitia Pilkington. Now this is incredibly fascinating because I haven't heard of Letitia Pilkington, but she was from the early 1700s and mainly in the 1730s, and she's associated with many famous men such as Jonathan Swift, and she was considered the Queen of Wit. And she went through very tumultuous stages in her life. She slept with a few other men besides her husband. He ended up divorcing her, which was a big trial at the time. And she stayed within the fashionable set of society, but only on the very fringes. So she was something fashionable to have at a party, but she wasn't to be associated with for anyone of good standing. So I think women like this who have had a standing in society but also very clever and witty, you could see their downfall at the time, and so I was really fascinated over this. And besides, it's an amazing cover. It continues all the way around. It's a Faber and Faber book actually. And it's got some great quotes from what they used to say about Mrs. Pilkington at the time and all the different things that she used to say to them and really bring them down a notch or two. So this looks like it's going to be a hilarious book, but also very interesting to see how women of wit and knowledge were treated when they were quite independent. My final book was actually an amazing find because it's in a beautiful condition, and that is Jenny Lawson's Let's Pretend This Never Happened, a mostly true memoir. So I'm sure you all know Jenny Lawson from her Furiously Happy memoir, which has the taxidermy raccoon with giant eyes and glitter, gold glitter everywhere. This is her first one. And I have been wanting to pick this up for a while, but I just never got around to it. And so when I saw it there for $1, this was such a great find. And it sounds going into the life of her father and just reading the blurb, how eccentric and crazy he was. How he used to just make her life completely different. And how she used to see that difference when other kids would talk about how crazy their parents was, and she's like, no, let me tell you a story of how crazy my dad is. But there's obviously an amount of love there for him as well. So this sounds really fun, and it sounds like a really great read. So they are all the books I've picked up in April and so far into May. Hopefully I won't pick up too many more for the rest of May because my TBR list is outpacing my read list. So I really need to do a bit of a balance catch up and probably go on a book buying ban for a little bit. I know I probably won't be able to stick to it, but probably minimise it down to a few books every now and then when the budget allows. So thanks for joining me, guys. I hope to see you all next time. Bye!